You know, recently I've been reevaluating my study, and I've come to realize that I really need to hike up the virginity points in this particular corner. I mean, I've got a shelf full of manga, but it's still just not enough. I need another title that will surely drive the point home that a woman has never stepped within 100 yards of this room. And I think I know just the perfect title to do that. Oh boy, it's here! Nice. Yes, that's right. It's time to talk about my favorite kind of a reference, a JoJo's reference. This is JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 1 Phantom Blood by Hirohito Araki. It was originally serialized starting January 1st, 1987, and ran until October 26th of that same year in Weekly Shonen Jump. How I read it was through the 2015 Viz Media Deluxe hardcover editions. Araki was born June 7th, 1960 in Sendai, Japan. He was a relatively unknown artist at the time he started JoJo. His career has started 7 years earlier in 1980 with the one-shot manga titled Poker Under Arms, which won a Tezuka Award that same year. As time went on, Araki developed a particular style of very muscular characters and extreme over-the-top gore, with series like 1985's The Gorgeous Irene and 1984's Boa. We see this style in full force in Phantom Blood, as well as Araki's affinity for characters striking bizarre and sometimes impossible poses that come from him referencing fashion models and classical art. The story of Part 1 is set in England in the late 1800s. The main characters are Jonathan Joestar and Dio Brando, both of whom come from completely different backgrounds. Jonathan, also known as JoJo, is the son of a wealthy widower named George Joestar. You see, shortly after JoJo was born, George and his wife were in a carriage crash that resulted in his wife's death. However, he is discovered by a man named Dario Brando, who believes him to be dead at first and was robbing him. Due to a misunderstanding, George believed that Dario was actually trying to save him, and so he offers him a favor. This is where we learn of the stone mask, which is in the possession of George Joestar. Soon after, Dario dies, sending his only son Dio to the Joestar estate, where he is then adopted into the family. But Dio has nefarious intentions, and the moment he arrives, he begins planning to steal the Joestar fortune. But in order to do that, he has to get JoJo out of the picture. From the moment Dio arrives, he makes JoJo's life a living hell, completely isolating him from his friends and even straining his relationship with his father. He does this in a variety of ways, from humiliation to becoming the model gentleman in the eyes of George Joestar. As the two grow up, they become interested in the stone mask. Once they learn that when blood touches it, powerful spikes shoot out of the mask and go into the brain of the wearer. But they are both clueless as to what the spikes do, however. Dio plans to finally take the Joestar fortune by slowly poisoning George Joestar. JoJo learns of this, and he then sets out to find the antidote and to bring Dio to justice. On his search for the antidote, he meets Robert E.O. Speedwagon, and the two quickly become friends. They find the antidote and return to the mansion in order to confront Dio. Dio, meanwhile, learns of the true power of the mask. It has the ability to turn the wearer into a sort of super powerful vampire. JoJo, Speedwagon, and the police confront Dio at the mansion, but before they are able to capture him, Dio turns himself into a vampire and fights JoJo. JoJo then wins, or so it seems, but he is mortally wounded and is taken to the hospital in order to recover. Meanwhile, it is then revealed that Dio survived and he moves into the shadows in order to regain his strength. Once JoJo recovers, he returns to the mansion and ends up meeting a Will A. Zappelli, who tells him that Dio is actually still alive and that the only way to truly kill him is through the power of Hamon. JoJo quickly learns how to use Hamon, and he, along with Speedwagon and Zappelli, sets out in order to destroy Dio, his undead minions, and the mask before he turns everyone in the world into his undead army. Starting with the art, overall I found it to be very striking to say the least. Phantom Blood is pretty infamous for its sometimes strange art, and while yes, it does have its moments in terms of strange perspective and characters striking impossible poses, but that just feels pretty nitpicky. Overall, I really like Araki's art style. He puts a lot of attention to the designs of his characters, and his depictions of gore in the series is just masterful. Where the art is at its best, however, is in how it conveys movement and his ability to make fight scenes just that much more intense, with heavy use of motion lines and such. His panel layout is also very unconventional. It really makes the scenes feel more intense, along with his use of varied perspectives. It also just makes for interesting reading. Now, I want to focus on Araki's character design because I cannot stress enough just how fantastic it is. All the characters look unique, and all of their designs reflect their personality well. I mean, just look at Speedwagon's gang. They are all very minor characters, and yet so much attention is put into their designs, and it just conveys to the audience the fact that they are nasty street criminals. Continuing on the subject of the characters. The characters are probably the best part of Phantom Blood. While they are clearly defined between good and evil, and there's very little gray in between, some might find this to be bad or just part of dated storytelling, but this is done intentionally, and it works. JoJo is the definitive good guy, but he's still likable. He's a character whom we want to see succeed. Dio, on the other hand, is the complete opposite, being the most evil man on the planet, and Dio is just so damn evil. But that is what makes him awesome. Then there's Speedwagon, a bona fide true blue national treasure. And Zeppi plays the mysterious but wise teacher perfectly. The only real bad characters that are worth mentioning are the three strangers. They are introduced out of nowhere in chapter 36, and then they don't really do much of importance other than fight a couple zombies, and then they just completely disappear a few chapters later. The story is the generic beat the bad guy story, but again, it works here because of just how likable the characters are, and because of the overall ridiculousness of the actual manga. Now, of course, being a fighting manga, it needs to have good fights. And not just that, but opponents that can really add to the overall impact and awesomeness of the manga. And boy, does JoJo deliver. Most of the time. There are only really 4 or 5 major fighting opponents that JoJo goes up against, and they're all okay. The best opponents being, of course, Dio, who, as I've already said, is just an awesome character. He is so much fun to watch. He almost plays with his opponents and gives off the air of just a super powerful demigod who truly just does not give a fuck. Dio's fights with JoJo are intense, and JoJo has to defeat Dio each time using clever methods, and is always willing to make the sacrifice for the better of humanity. Then there's the Blueford fight. He was great because he was one of the more complex characters compared to the others. His fight was one of the better ones in my opinion. You see, Blueford was torn between the absolute hatred for the world, which is how Dio was able to get him to do his bidding, and yet unlike the other villains, Blueford respects JoJo, and the two seem like well-matched opponents. I also like the ending. Without giving away any spoilers, the final fight I felt was pretty impactful, and I thought that the ending was sweet. It might be a bit too mushy-gushy for some, but I think that it's just the perfect ending for the type of story that Phantom Blood is. With positives out of the way, however, let's get into my negatives. The first major problem with Phantom Blood is Hamon. Hamon is the fighting method that is the only way to defeat Dio. Hamon is sunlight energy created through breathing a certain way and is channeled through the blood. The problem I have with Hamon, however, is it's not very well established what it is. The rules of Hamon always seem to be changing. For example, Sabelli says that Hamon cannot pass through metal, and yet JoJo does it multiple times, controlling Hamon through a sword in one fight and a chain in another. Also, new abilities just get added that are never really explained, and they feel like they were just added to move the plot along, such as Leaf Kite. Also, Sabelli becomes a Hamon master through years of training, and then JoJo just practically becomes one overnight. And this plays into another problem I have with Phantom Blood, and that is the pacing. Between chapters 5 and 6, there is a major time jump, and it doesn't make too much sense. We leave chapter 5 with JoJo and Dio feuding in their late teens, but then in chapter 6 they are about to graduate college and they're just cool with each other now. It kind of feels like we missed a bit in between that time. I mean, Dio was really messing with JoJo's life. And now JoJo is just okay with Dio? Now? Another problem I have, and it's related to the Hamon problem, is Dio's power. It is also not well established, and it seems that new things just keep getting added that are never explained and just come out of nowhere. Dio is supposed to be like a super powerful vampire, and he could turn people into zombies. Okay. He can also raise the dead. Alright. Oh, and he can just fly, create mutant monsters, and freeze people? Sure. For its flaws, however, it really is a good manga. The characters are highly enjoyable and the story worked well enough. However, if JoJo's Bizarre Adventure ended here, we probably wouldn't be talking about it today. Phantom Blood most likely would have been just a strange little footnote in the history of 80s muscle men fighting manga. But it's because it continued on and became the series that we know today that we're discussing it. That's why I'm going to give JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Phantom Blood a 7 out of 10. And there you have it, another manga review done. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you agreed with what I had to say about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 1.